Hey there, welcome to ATL and 29, a podcast where we look at the NBA from the starting point of Atlanta. My name is Kevin Chouinard. I'm here with Glen Willis. We're recording on Thanksgiving, uh, after a half week or so when the Hawks lost to the Dallas Mavericks and then turned around and came away with a road victory in Cleveland. Glenn, when you have a pair like Quinn Snyder and Donovan Mitchell that work together for quite a long time, who do you think that is there any advantage that one gets over the other, kind of knowing what their tendencies are?
Um, I mean, I guess if I had to pick one side, I think the coach, kind of being knowing what the player likes to do, spots on the floor likes to get to, all that sort of stuff helps. But I would say at the same time, if said coach doesn't have the caliber of defender like Dyson Daniels, it might not matter.
Right.
So it's like more of the combination of having defender who can maybe go out and implement guidance around that. But it is interesting to see those types of encounters around the league.
Uh, did you have any strong takeaways from the Cleveland game that you want to talk about?
So the big one for me is I thought, it's a little side note here. So I just shared on Twitter and this guy Hawks are 4-1 against teams in the Eastern Conference that are ahead of them in the standings. They're 2-5 against teams that are beneath them in the standings. I think when we look at the Cleveland game, what stood out for me was that winning a tough game so often comes down to mentality and being mentally tough and moving on from moments of adversity. For me, that turnover that Trey had late when he thought he got fouled, looked at the ref, seemed to lose track of the ball. They go down, and Cleveland hits the three. I was like, oh no, like that felt like the play on which the whole game could pivot right there. And Trey will say he's been struggling to make shots the last few weeks, but he came back down and was able to knock down that three-pointer that kind of put them right back into a good spot. And another example out of the game is, I mean, the Hawks were struggling to score from 2-point range. They're struggling to score inside. You can't abandon attacking the paint, you can't, right? Even if you're not, even though you're having bad results, you got to stay committed to attacking. And even though like the stats, never got back to a point where it looked great, like I remember that one drive that Hunter had, middle of the fourth quarter, maybe a little bit less than that to go, and got an and one, and that's an example of when mentally they're like, no, I don't want to go back in there, you know, that really would have um, created an obstacle for them to kind of keep working through. So to me, the biggest part of the win is the mental toughness they showed to move on from bad moments and move on to the next moment and continue attacking and being aggressive and dealing with all the physicality that Cleveland was trying to bring. So that was the theme to the win for me.
Yeah, with what you just said there about the driving, like it's where somebody like Jalen Johnson, when he's doing sort of the best version of Jalen Johnson, he becomes so valuable because if you have some drivers, I mean Cleveland with what they do with Mobley and Allen, like it's just so much. Like there's just so much good contesting inside that um you don't just need a driver, you need sort of an elite level driver, somebody who's going to be able to finish even over a pretty good contest. And, he really did that. He wasn't stopping 5 feet short. He was kind of getting all the way in and making sure that, that it was a strong finish. And so even if, some other, like, it didn't seem like, Trey was trying to get a whole lot of shots at the rim, for example, like he'd be more drive and kick. But when you at least have one elite driver to keep them honest, that's kind of, in a lot of cases enough. Like you don't want to abandon it entirely, but just as long as you've got something you can go to there, it kind of keeps them committed. But the other thing to me was just like, you mentioned the teams above them in the standings, the teams below them in the standings. Like to me, the bench is what gives them some level of consistency. It feels like that's starting to come into being what they might have expected at the beginning of the season. Like because they've just been sunk by so many 10-0 runs, 11-1 runs, 12-0 runs and often that happens with two, three, four bench players on the floor at that time. And like when you get the kind of bench performance that you get, that the bench is really kind of showing up now. Hunter has been back for a while and has been good for a couple of weeks. Bogey, he had kind of two rough games when he first came back. Against Dallas, it felt like he was great on offense, but his defense was all over the place. This felt like a consistent kind of full show up kind of bogey game. And then on top of that, they're only using four bench players. And so if you get a mature Kobe game to go with those other bench players, and of course a Kongwu too, like they really didn't have a bad performance among the four bench players. And when you get that level of consistency, that makes a huge difference. I mean, I want to go back. I didn't actually do it yet, but one of my plans for today is to go back and look at Trey's 22 assists. To me, it feels like a lot of those came with the bench players. Like he was feeding Hunter, he probably has 6 assists to Hunter, something like that. A few
Yeah.
to a Kongwu. Like he was the bench players were cashing in on his good setup. So like that made a huge difference to me that they had some shot making from the bench.
Yeah, and it's a big difference from the team last year. Like last year, after their first seven guys, depending on who was hurt or available or whatever, it was rough. But in this game, they got down big in the first quarter, and it was really that second unit that came in and really kind of fought back in the last 3, 4, 5 minutes of the first quarter.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because I don't mean this. I don't mean to be demeaning anyone who's like, oh man, Kobe sucks. Like he needs to go to the G League, or whatever. I mean, even like on the video I posted the Patreon, Brad and I talked about what 2 or 3 games help him, where he gets to play a lot. This is why you don't shut down a young guy after 2 or 3 bad games. Coming back from injury is he Kobe needs to play against NBA players, and it's going to be up and down. I would expect still going forward, but that game was an example of what he needs to face to really calibrate his game as an NBA rotation player. That has to happen, right? And that has felt like he's been detrimental in other since he's come back, right? That's only fair to say that, right? But you can't just kind of pull him right off the floor if he's a big part of your future or something that you believe in. And he was a big part of that comeback in the first quarter. Made shots, was your word, mature with the basketball in his hands, was more steady, more stable, and that was great to see.
Happy Thanksgiving, Tyler.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Yeah, last night was interesting. Like you said, I think the bench was probably the biggest factor. The shot making, really came through. I still am not liking what I'm seeing defensively from either Bogey or Hunter right now. Like, particularly Bogey. It's not just he's getting beat one on one. It just feels like he's not executing the scheme defensively. And I thought Jalen actually called him out on it during the game. Like you could literally see Jalen after he made a shot to keep the lead, or I don't know what they were on the score. He's like barking at Bogey. He's like, "Yo," I don't know what he said, but I mean, it's pretty obvious watching the game. Like Bogey's kind of doing his own thing defensively, and it's frustrating because we've seen him execute defensively before, not just with the Hawks, but also with Serbia. So, like, it's been a fairly frustrating start from him. I'm not understanding his thought process on the defensive side of the floor. And Hunter, you know, I mean, he's just limited. He's just as a forward, he's just not that good of an athlete, and it's really noticeable when you compare him to like Dyson and Ricochet, how easy they're able to cover ground, move on the floor, contest shots at the rim. Like DeAndre is just not that level of athlete to do that. It's not that like he's not a bad defender, but on this Hawks team, when you're throwing out lineups where it's him, Okongwu, Bogey, uh, sometimes it's not Jalen, sometimes it's Dyson, and then Kobe Buffkin or Trey Young. Like it's just tough for them to get the long rebounds, for them to you know string together defensive stops. So it comes down to the issue with the bench currently right now is like those lineups have to make shots. They're not making shots, they're not getting stops. And so that's where the Hawks are running into trouble, where their starting unit is pretty good defensively. And honestly, if Ricochet is making shots, like I, I get why he went back to Hunter, but I would have stayed for Ricochet for the defense because the Cavaliers they couldn't do anything when Ricochet was on the floor. Like when Ricochet Dice is on the floor, the Cavs offense was absolute garbage. And so like I thought the Hawks had a good chance to really pull away earlier if he stayed with Ricochet, but Hunter had it going too. So and he's the older player. I get it, but like defensively, it's just very noticeable, like physically with Hunter. And it's not even a knock. I'm not trying to knock him or anything. It's just like Ricochet is just a different caliber athlete on defense. And it's like that's
Yeah,
kind of what the Hawks need if they want to be contender. Like if the Hawks want to contend, they need Ricochet. Like if he starts making shots, we're talking about a different caliber player because this defense is already there. We've been talking about that a couple times here.
And when
yeah,
you
and
mentioned that the bench is making shots, like that helps their defense, especially I think
Absolutely.
in Kobe's case, because that plays to his strengths as a defender, because then he's pressuring the ball
Yep.
35 feet from the basket and using up shot clock. And of course, that's true of like any team. Your defense gets better when you're making shots. But I think it's amplified a little bit with this unit where they're weaker around the perimeter and in the back line, that at the point of attack, that, if you got one plus on the ball defender in Kobe and, maybe some question marks everywhere else, then it amplifies the effect of your defense getting a little bit better when you make shots.
And I
yeah,
and I also think with the bench, he should if like if he's limiting Ricochet's minutes like this, where he's not even playing 20 minutes anymore, like he might as well get him some. He can get him some minutes at backup power forward instead of running these Hunter these Hunter Bogey Dyson lineups are way too small. Like you're asking way too much of Dyson Daniels to grab the rebounds as well as be the on ball defender. Like that's just not going to work. Um, like if you want to buy some minutes for Jalen, that's one way to do it. I think Ricochet's kind of, I mean, defensively, he's been really good at the rim all season. He's not very strong, but he stays vertical and he contests shots at the rim without fouling. As a help defender, I think the Hawks should lean to that more and play him more because, quite frankly, they need to be playing Ricochet, Jalen, and Dyson as much as they possibly can for defensive purposes. And so in order to like not take minutes away from Hunter and Bo because they absolutely need their shot.
yeah. It's interesting to think about how to organize the defense on the second unit because you think back that Sacramento game. I don't remember how long ago that was now, but Bogey was awesome defensively in that game. Every other game he's played on, his defense has been. But that game, I don't know if it's matchup, I don't know what it was, but he was chasing guys off the 3 point line. He was funneling. After he takes off the line, he's funneling them into to paint the rim protect. He was good in that game, but it's been rough. I can't think of one other good game he's had besides that one. And in this matchup with Cleveland, it's interesting to think about because the way that they configure their lineup with basically two bigs, right? Hunter's either going to be on a big guy who has more verticality than he has, right? Like Mobley, if he gets, kind of matched up with Mobley, if Jalen's off the floor, or he gets, they, the Hawks could not avoid getting lesser defenders switched onto Mitchell and Garland in the game. Now, Cleveland got a lot of leeway with their screens. There was a lot of holding, stuff like that, but I mean, that's a whole different
Don't get
conversation.
me started.
Yeah, I know. That's part that part. And then it's funny is like, you know, Cleveland got attacked. I'm like, you're complaining about the officiating, Anyway, that's a whole different kind of rabbit trail. But in a matchup like against Cleveland, there's not. the problem is if you have Hunter and Bogey on together, you don't want Bogey on the ball handler, and Hunter's maybe 20% better, maybe on the ball. I mean,
Mm.
it's a lesser evil, but
Functionally,
just
he's not really better. Like they're both like just not able to stay in front of the guard, and it's just way too easy for Mitchell to get downhill on either of them. That's where like Quinn has to. I mean, it's tough. They have to play. They have to play together, but like it's a tough matchup for the Hawks. On the other end, like the Cavs, you know, perimeter players are fairly small. The Hawks took it. I thought Hunter and Bogey both took advantage of that by shooting over smaller defenders.
yeah, it is funny to see Hunter's value if he can continue to play consistent offense. It's like that's where they're leaning on him,
Yeah.
And it is buying time for Shea to have up and down games offensively. It is buying time for for them to continue leading into development with Kobe, and I think that's helpful. But I don't. I'm not going to laugh at any Hawks fans. They're still saying, "Is this real? Is this going to stick?" Because he's been pretty consistently good on offense so far, right? And you kind of go back to like, when is he going to miss another game? You're always worried about that with him. And I say they have to be prepared to play without him because of just the history that's there. But they don't win this game without what he gave them on offense. But Tyler's right. They had a lot to work around on defense with certain second unit combinations they had on the floor. They had a lot to work around.
I, in the last episode, I asked Glenn this question, and now we've got, in my opinion, two starkly different games from him. But what do you make of what you've seen from Onyeka Okongwu in recent weeks?
I don't know, inconsistency. So like the same, frustrating thing that's been plaguing him. Really since I want to honestly say since he had the shoulder surgery, like because it felt like uh honestly his rookie year after his initial rookie struggles, he was fairly consistent as a player. But then once he got the shoulder surgery, now maybe the toe is bothering him now. So it's one of those things where I don't know because it is bizarre. He has a now for whatever reason the Cavaliers are a good matchup for him. I can't explain exactly why he's able to play with that level of physicality on the defensive end in particular consistently against the Cavs, whereas he was just an absolute like non-factor against the Mavericks physically. That doesn't make that much sense considering Mobley and Jared Allen are much better players than Lively and I'm forgetting the
Gafford
center and
and
Gafford.
Faber.
Yeah, and Max
Gafford and
Cleveland.
Lively are huge. Gafford and
Yeah,
Lively are
that
huge.
that is a difference. That is a difference. And they're vertically like in the biggest issue I'm seeing with a Congo, and I'm texting Brad all the time. I'm like, I don't know if a Congo can actually jump. Like even against the Cavs game, like everything he did physically was before he's not letting he didn't let the ball handlers jump. Like he was just getting them before they jumped and like getting to the ball before they were getting into their action. Like he has no ability to like get above the cylinder anymore. So like I don't know what's going on with him, but that's an issue because you don't know what you're going to get from night to night. Capella, who's been pretty good for the most part, had a rough game in large part. I thought his decision making on when to shoot was just bad, but it's not unique. It's not unique that Capella struggles against like vertical defenders, but he's been pretty good now that he can catch the ball again against like smaller guys. Like his hook shots going in a lot more just against smaller players, but against bigger guys, like he can't create separation. That's really the difference between those two right now. So, I mean, the good news is they play the Cavs again, and Okongwu's consistently good against Allen and Mobley, so he should be good again. But the inconsistency is kind of brutal because like there's like against the Mavs, he might as well not have been on the floor. Like it was like he was just really bad.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's interesting that part of Plant's issue on offense is to me it goes back to matchup. So they were running a lot of 1-4 pick and roll instead of 1-5. And when he's not in that, like what is he supposed to do? Yeah, like he doesn't really have a skill to offer, in another role, unless you go old school, just leave him in the dunker spot. And even when they weren't running 1-4, they were running a lot of that bi-directional screen action with the 2 and the 3. Like the 2 would come up, set the screen, and they would try to get that second to switch on the second screen, that cross action screen. And Clint's just, hanging out, at a spot wherever he can kind of hang out. So in that sense, I understand I guess why there weren't natural opportunities for him. But it was interesting, like when Quint went back to Congo to close the game, I didn't know if he was going to do that, But and I've said I feel like when they win close games, they win it with their defense, and that was true in this game as well, I think. And but it was interesting to see Glen go back to Anyeka and to kind of trust that. And maybe Anyeka was clearly giving them more offensive juice at the center position than Clint was. Clint really was what they were on offense. Clint really had nothing to offer them.
I mean, I thought Okongwu was also better defensively. Like he was just
Yeah.
better at playing the passing lanes. Where Capella is just allowing these guys to throw these passes. It's like, bro, come on. You can't allow the bounce pass to the center when there's no help behind you. Like you have to have your hands up, disrupt the pass, or anticipate that he's going to throw it. Like trust your size, in these drop cover situations. Like you cannot give up these bounce passes to these centers rolling downhill to the rim. Like there's nobody behind you that's going to be able to stop Jared Allen. Like the entire run in the first quarter was just the Cavs just abusing Capella in basic action and him not affecting the ball handler or his role man. Like it was kind of weird watching him because I mean he's usually pretty good at this stuff, but for whatever reason the Cavaliers kind of confound him, his spacing, and he doesn't know where he needs to be on the floor. Whereas I think a big adjustment the Hawks made was they stopped respecting the driver. They were like, okay, if if Darius Garland wants to drive all the way to the front of the rim, we're gonna meet him at the rim, but not before he lifts off. Like he's 6 foot 100 whatever pounds. Like we gotta trust our size. We can't give up these easy passes to the corner. Like we got to take away. They're looking to pass the ball when they drive to the front of the rim. They're not looking to score. And so I thought like a big adjustment defensively was just them staying in these passing lanes, like getting deflections, getting steals, uh, and really being like, okay, like if you're gonna try to finish over us, like good luck. Like Ricochet 6'10", Jalen Johnson 6'10", like who's a good rim protector when he's in position. Like I thought the Hawks were much better after Capella, left the floor. But also, I think they made an adjustment. They were like, "Hey, guys, they're not looking to score on these drives. Like, I understand we don't want to give up dribble penetration. They're getting it on these screens because they're not calling illegal screens. We understand that. Let them go to the front of the rim. Like that's how teams are guarding Trey Young right now. By the way, teams let Trey Young get wherever he wants to the front of the rim because they know he can't jump right now, and so he can't finish at the rim. And so teams are like, we're going to try to take away his pass. And so if he jumps, Trey's like, it's over for Trey. So it's good to see the Hawks use that strategy against another team.
Yeah, the other kind of picking on that, they were covering the corner a lot more effectively and forcing the Cavs to kick the ball above the break.
Mm-hmm.
And when the ball's moved above the break, you've got typically two defenders that can get into rotation, but one of two defenders that can get in rotation. When you're pulled all the way in from the corner, like you can't get there. You cannot get there. And it's a short shot, and so guys are comfortable putting up. So it'd be interesting to see if they continue to kind of uh, occupy space in a way that forces the pass to be back up above the break as opposed to the corner. Because I thought that was a really big part of their defensive execution of the game that helped them win the game.
It's a longer floater pass, and that gives Dyson Daniels and Ricochet and that goes to my point where defensively I was like, because you notice it when it's Hunter and Bogey trying to do this compared to Dyson and Ricochet, where they make that floating pass. Ricochet and Dyson are getting out there, getting to these shooters and like in position to contest a shot and then also contest a drive if they want to. They're in position. Whereas Bogey and Hunter just aren't fast enough. Like they just physically aren't fast enough to execute that consistently. And I thought, the back and forth aspect of the game came down to really it came down to okay, who's going to make shots at the end. The Hawks this time made shots, whereas the Cavs were missing had missed a couple good looks towards the end of the game. That's where the separation occurred. But like, uh, I, one thing I'm glad that Quinn realized he couldn't get away with playing Hunter and Bogey to close, like, because they were just getting ate a lot. Like the Cavaliers were eating those two up, and so like it's going to be on Quinn to be it's going to be on Quinn to stagger those two better. Not even just against the Cavs, but just going forward. He does it in the first half pretty well, where they don't come in at the same time, and then Hunter leaves first, and then comes in at the end, and Bogey stays like. But he's got to be like, okay, I can buy some minutes with these two, but he's just got to recognize like right now defensively, even though Hunter executes like it you know, when you got Trey Young on the team, it's just tough. Like you're seeing. I think something that's becoming clear with this season is that you're really seeing that for Trey to be an effective defender, he needs guys like Dyson and Ricochet to be on the floor with him. But the offense is just going to be a little bit of a problem until those guys make shots.
I think it's compounded by the fact that, in past seasons, the Hawks were more effective with Trey as a lob team. And it's
Yeah,
not just the fact that the spacing is worse with Dyson and Ricochet. It's just that Onyeka and Clint are not the lob threats that they were 2 years ago. And it's changing the dynamic of the team. Like Clint's finishes are not within 3 feet, they're 5 feet, 7 feet, hook shots as opposed to layups and dunks. And I think it's changed the game for Trey in a lot of ways. What he can do with on offense. It's not just the spacing of his perimeter players and how he is physically. It's how his centers are physically because it allows the centers to guard him more effectively on defense when they're not worried about the lob threat of Capella and Okongwu. Because when he had lob threats, like in Collins, Okongwu, and Capella all at once, like he was basically putting up historic kind of lob assist numbers. Like nobody had done that in the last 40 years the way he's done it. Am I crazy? I didn't
no,
even ask
no,
you a question. I'm just making a statement.
no. That's something. So I floated something on Blue Sky and to Brad about potential trade options, and one was like, it has like a combo for Mitchell Robinson has to be, something that they might want to consider, just because even though Mitchell, Robinson, he's hurt all the time, but so is everybody on the Hawks. So like, what's new there? But like, he's just so big and he's such a great lob threat. Like the lack of a lob threat is readily apparent with the Hawks right now. They actually went with that. They went to the lob with Jalen more against the Cavs, but I've talked about this in the past before about how Jalen, that's not something they probably want him doing or that he wants to do a lot, considering his ankle problems. But like, it is something he is good at when he does it. Ricochet is just not strong enough to
That's right.
maintain positioning when he goes up the lob through contests. It's not like he can't do it, but like he's right now, like if he gets a lob, like he's going to just be flying 30 feet the other way on the slightest bit of contact. So that's really where those are his and like Kongu was catching lobs first. That's what's frustrating. Kongu was doing the lob stuff first game, but that hasn't been back since. So um, I don't know with Onyeka and then Clint just he's just not the athlete that he used to be. That's obvious. I mean, it's good on the Hawks. It's good on the Hawks and Trey in particular to understand that he's not the lob threat he used to be and adjusting,
Yep.
throwing bounce passes to him to where he can catch the ball and just float it over the top. But that doesn't help Trey as a scorer,
That's right.
So So there is some levels of the Hawks need to be looking out for a bigger center who can just catch lob dunks, like and like to get you know to get Trey back to where he used to be as a scorer driving to the rim. It's not that he's still like there's still stuff. I mean, a lot of it he still just needs to finish a lot of these stuff, but with how his like to me, I think a big issue Trey has he doesn't know like how high he can jump. Like it just feels like it's like he's having misfires in game action when he jumps. It happens with his jump shot sometimes too, where he just doesn't know if his Achilles is going to like do what he thinks it should do based on years of experience. So like there's levels of and so like currently he's not getting that spacing help from his centers because they're not able to jump above the square to finish when they're open. Like it's a lot of Trey has to be more precise and that's just more timing things. And so it's just a little bit more complicated. So that's where it's like, not that Okongwu, I don't think I'm saying it has to be considered, but I might not do it. It's just something to consider where it's like getting a bigger center who is just going to catch every lob Trey throws at him wherever he puts it above the square. Like that would help the Hawks a lot in the short term, but there are some aspects of long term I could see the Hawks maybe not wanting to do that, considering where Ricochet and Jalen are as players. But it would ideally they would have like ideally their third center would be like a bigger body player, not Larry Nance, if that makes sense. Where it's like a guy who will just catch lobs and rebound, like an Andre Drummond esque type, third center, if that makes sense.
Or one of the seven Plumlee brothers 5 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Or Nance 8 years
Yeah,
ago.
true. Yeah, yeah.
Nance a couple years ago. John Collins,
Yeah.
right now, like as a backup center, like just somebody who's going to just, all right, when I'm coming in to get because like shooting is nice, like the shooting Nance provides is okay, but he's not. That's not his thing. Like he's not an elite shooter out there. Like that's not something he'll he'll probably ever be. Like and so it's one of those where it's like we're getting the worst of both worlds from Nance, where he's not good enough as a shooter, and as a lob threat, he's just not what he used to be. And everybody knows it, and they're like, well, and then on defensive side of the like, if people wonder why Nance isn't playing, it's like defensively, he's just too small. Like the Hawks don't, other than Jalen Johnson, they don't have the power forward depth to support a center like Nance. And so it's like, well, yeah, I can work with Jalen, but Jalen got to play. You know, how many minutes is Jalen going to play? 48. Like they're just going to be minutes with Jalen's not on the floor. They need bigger center. They need their centers to be able to hold up at least a lot better than what Nance had been providing defensively.
Speaking of dunks, like Monday at shoot around, kind of after everybody had kind of cleared out, Garrison Matthews was going hard, and you could tell, like, okay, he's not in the rotation tonight. You don't go this hard on a game day if you're playing that night. And so I was watching Garrison, and it's like, okay, yeah, there's no plan for him to be in the rotation tonight. And then he threw down like this double clutch, like leaning dunk, and it's like, okay, Garrison. Like, he was all fired up, but that was like that surprised me a little bit. He's not the biggest person, but he got way up there. And it was not just a get his fingers over the rim dunk either. Like he manipulated the ball in air and got way up, and Lauren can back me up because we were both watching it like, oh, okay, Garrison, sure. But yeah.
Garrison got springs. I mean,
Yeah,
you
he
see it on his jump
does.
shot. You see it on
Yeah,
defense
you
when he
see it
times
on his
out.
jump shot. Yeah.
I mean, you see it on defense too when he
Yep.
times up a shooter. Like he will block the shot. Like
Yep.
um
Yeah. He
he's
has to
very
load up when he
balanced.
gets it.
Yeah, yeah. He has to load up though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on the Dallas game?
It just
They
was
got a
not
big
fun to
stamp.
watch.
That too. They Bogey. I don't. That was like one of the worst games I've ever seen. Like an individual player play of his caliber. He was horrific.
I mean,
Uh,
there was like a record scratch moment where it was like, like 3 seconds into the record scratch, it's like, okay, this is enough. Now you can go back and do your defensive assignment. And like, he still didn't do it. It was like a 12-second record scratch
yeah,
by
it
the time it
was.
was done. It's like, my God, what are you doing?
Right. Anyway,
I
and he went
there
back
was
to
one.
last year. So last year he'd just take fouls. Oh, and it's like that doesn't like, especially in the fourth quarter, like taking 2 fouls in the first 4 minutes. I mean, that's not going to help you at the end of the quarter. Sorry, Tyler.
No, Kevin, because to back you up, I think it might have been the play where Hunter was desperately trying to switch him out as being the low man, and like Bogey was just like not listening, and Hunter was like leave, 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 like he's literally tapping him at this point. The pass still hadn't made it to like somebody's wide open in the corner, and like Bogey would not leave. And then like of course the Mavs eventually get it out there and they make the open 3-pointer. I'm like, both, and that was like one of the earlier rotation stints, and I'm like, oh, this is what we're doing tonight, Bogey. And I don't know, it was a weird game from him. I thought he was jawing a lot with the Mavericks. I just don't think he was focused that game, and he was a game in which the Hawks had no business losing. They were up, like they were comfortably up 13. I really thought Bogey kind of let the team down there because he was putting Kobe in bad positions on offense too. Like it wasn't just his defensive issues. Like offensively, um, he was kind of just going off the handle like that. There's no other way to describe it. Where weirdly enough, he had it box score wise, it looked like he had a decent game, but to me, like his process was just bad too. And so, it was a tough night for him. And I talked about Okongwu. I just didn't feel his presence physically the entire game. Like it's one of those games where coach got to be like, hey, Okongwu, you're doing a good job of not taking fouls. Can you take a foul or something? Like do something like to show that you're on the floor physically, so that the other team feels you as a presence. And he was also dropping passes. Weird. It was just a bad game overall for him, and like the bench really put the Hawks behind the 8 ball that entire game. A game in which I thought the Hawks should have. It's unfortunate because Trey probably had his best stretch since the Achilles injury until last night, where he looked like he had the juice physically and he was getting after it on both ends, and the Hawks defensively was pretty good, but no, he was struggling.
And I thought Kyrie was embodied the ghost of Lou Williams, getting
Yeah,
left at will in the second half. So that was the thing for me. But, well, hopefully that early game on Friday will be a fun one.
Yeah, I'm not happy with whoever scheduled a 2:30 game. Like, what
I
is
I
that?
figured.
Black Friday, 2:30 on a Friday.
I
Unacceptable.
mean, I mean, the Hornets got to play at 11, so or 12 or whatever.
Well, that'll help them before the weirdo Saturday 6 o'clock game. I don't know. Whatever.
Well,
It's
have fun, Kevin.
basketball. All right. Well, thank you both for joining me, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your holiday.
Yeah,
And
likewise.
same for you, Bob.
Yeah. Happy
Happy
Thanksgiving, Bob.
holidays, Bob.